Hello and welcome back to another Rush Duel Links deck profile. Today we're taking a look at Dark Arts of Celerity Warriors. So this deck is also kind of known as Yami Ruler Lock. It's a very kind of oppressive deck when it gets to do what it wants to do, but it does have a lot of counters. So we're first going to go through and just talk about what the deck really wants to do. So the deck wants to get to your opponent's life points in kind of unorthodox ways. The main ways we want to get there is using Pierce to just get in for a chunk of damage. If we can hit a 0 defense monster, perfect, we'll get in for like 2500. And the other is Kime Ruler the Dark Raider. If all your opponent's monsters are in defense mode, we can just get in directly for 2500 damage. So that's kind of what we want to do. We want to get in for 25 here, 25 there, and then chip away at them to kind of finish them off, which can sometimes work. So Yami Ruler, again, the big floodgate boss monster, everyone knows it. During the turn you normal summon it, change the battle position, attack becomes face up defense, defense becomes attack. Until the end of your opponent's next turn, while this card is face up, neither player contributes summon level 7 or higher monsters. So if your opponent's deck relies on level 7 or higher monsters, this can really mess them up, and going to 2500 defense almost guarantees it's going to survive the turn. This is kind of what you do. You want to slow the pace of the game down so that you can then beat over your opponent. If your opponent knows that you're on this deck, they'll then not want to play all the monsters in defense mode because then they know they're playing into Kime Ruler the Dark Raider. But if they leave them in attack mode, you can then on the following turn just pick away at them and get 1000 damage here, 1000 damage there. So it always works out for you in the end no matter what. The skill also really helps out with this. So this is one of the more useful skills in the game in my opinion. So we can change one attack position monster on your opponent's field to face up defense position during the turn that we normal summon a level 6 or higher Dark or Earth Warrior monster. So that's pretty good. Being able to change monsters to defense really does help out with our game plan, since what we're planning to do is pierce through, in which case the monster needs to be in defense mode, or if all three of the monsters in defense, get to their life points. So it really does help out with what we're trying to do. So the next card we're going to look at is Rice Terror Secure. So this card's pretty good if we are bricking on a lot of our high level cards. We can simply get rid of them and change monsters' battle position, which again helps out with our game plan. Having all our opponent's monsters in defense mode is exactly what we're looking for. This also just helps you deal with annoying threats. For example, if your opponent has a Dragius or a Summoned Skull and we can't go over it, we can change it to defense with this and then attack over it with a Yami Ruler or with a Kime Ruler. Next up, Currybot. Now this deck can sometimes feel a little bit bricky. We are playing a decent amount of spells, and because of that, it means our tribute monsters can end up in our hand, not being able to summon them as often. Currybot works to try and fix this problem. We can use it, pay 500 life points to get another copy back to our hand, and then use them both as tribute fodder to get out our other big monsters. This also works quite well if we have two high level monsters in our hand. We can use Currybot to gain an extra body, so we have the other 3 bodies in hand, and then an extra one from Currybot, which means we can now summon out both of our high level monsters, which is pretty good. Next up, Umigumi. Umigumi is a weird one. We've thought about going up to 2, we tried it out a little bit, but 1 is generally where it feels best. 1700 attack level 6 is not very good, but if a face-up defense position monster is on the field, so the top card of the deck to the graveyard, one face-up monster on your opponent's field loses 500 attack and defense. So again, really, really good because we can change our opponent's monsters to defense using our Celerity skill. We can also use our Celerity when we summon Umigumi because it is a level 6 Earth Warrior. On top of that, using our Yami Ruler effect, we can change it to defense, and then there is a face-up defense position monster, so once again, Umigumi is live. Umigumi also doesn't have to weaken the monster that is in defense mode, so we can just use it on anything. So if opponent is like an attack mode Dragius or something, we can weaken that and then attack over it with a Yami Ruler or a Kime Ruler. It's just a very, very versatile and very, very powerful card. It works really well in the deck. Next up, Thunder the Thunder. Again, being able to discard can unbrick us, but also just being able to weaken monsters is very, very important, so we can attack over them. This, again, is fantastic into 2500 attack monsters because our 25s don't want to crash, so we'll just weaken them and get in that way. Next up, Nandez the Fire Awakener. This card almost exclusively is used with our Yami Ruler. Summon Yami Ruler, change it to defense for its skill, lock our opponent, summon out Nandez, change it back to attack mode, and now we have a 2500 attacker, and our opponent cannot tribute summon next turn. Next up, Fire Golem. This is primarily for the mirror match, but also for the same reason Umigumi can weaken monsters. This can also lower monsters' defense, so we can get even more damage in with Pierce, and occasionally this can just win you the game. Getting that extra 600 damage in can be very, very, very relevant. Next up, we have Twin Edge Dragon. This is another way to get to our opponent's life points. If we know our opponent has low defense monsters, we can simply use Twin Edge to clear them and then get in for a direct attack with a Yami Ruler, which can be fantastic. Alternatively, we can just clear their monsters and then attack in with the Twin Edge Dragon itself, just get 1000 here or there. It does all add up, and it can be a very, very devastating card if your opponent is ill prepared for it. Next up we have Masaki. This is our only 1500 attacker, and that's because our skill locks us into our only 1500 or higher attack monsters being warriors. It's fine. 1500 is always going to be a relevant number. Sometimes you'll just need a 1500 to be able to clear, or be able to get into your opponent, or be able to just get over a 1300 or a 1400 defender. Masaki is always just going to kind of be a useful card. Next up, Bonded Bowing. So this card is very, very cool. You can summon out your Yamirula, activate Bonded Bowing, change Yamirula to defense, draw a card, then activate Yamirula's effect while it's in defense to change it back to attack. That is the primary use of this card, but you can also use it just during your turn. If you just have like a Yamirula out, you can just activate Bonded Bowing, change it to defense, change it back to attack because you summoned it last turn, and just get a draw. That is how you use this card occasionally, and sometimes just the extra card can be really, really worth it. And then finally Pierce. Again, this is how we get to our opponent's life points. Very, very integral part of the deck. So I would say this deck is currently a solid tier 2 deck. The reason being that there is so much stuff that counter this deck. Seven's Road Witch is a very, very good counter to this deck because you can just cheat out Seven's Road Magician, which just outs all of the monsters in here. Seven's Road Witch is being played in the two best decks right now, being Seven's Axel Road Spellcasters and Dragoncasters, which means all of those decks hard counter this. On top of that, Fire Golem is a card that exists, and again, doesn't hard counter this deck, but it does make it a lot easier for your opponents to out the cards in this deck. Being able to just clear away the Yamirula and play underneath the lock is what really breaks this deck a lot, and a lot of decks have tools to be able to do that. Another one is Dragonic Resonance Dragons. Being able to just wipe the board with Dragonic Pressure, again, completely shuts down this deck. And being able to summon out level 6 monsters that can weaken it again, such as the Gravity Press Dragon, also really do just hard counter this deck. There are so many things that just hurt this deck that just don't hurt other decks. And because of that, this deck's been falling a little bit by the wayside, which is a bit of a shame because it is an interesting deck. Obviously, it does rely on a Floodgate gimmick in Yamirula, but I think that's fine because it's only a one-turn Floodgate. In order for your opponent to Floodgate you multiple times, they have to get lucky enough to just draw multiple Yamirula over the course of several turns, so I don't think it's that bad. Also, it can feel a little bit cheap to lose to this deck because effectively your opponents are attacking directly and piercing through with like just top deck a spell card, so it can feel a little bit scummy to play against, but it's still a unique deck. A lot of the other decks in this format do just want to bash face. They just want to swarm, aggro, smash, smash, smash. And this deck doesn't do that, which does make it stand out as being something a little bit more interesting. Anyway, let's fire in some replays. I can show what I've been talking about